So we'll now move on to plenary session number 2, called Artificial Intelligence Infrastructure, Fueling the Next Wave of Digital Services Exports.
The region's AI sector is fueling an 11% annual growth in digital services infrastructure, surpassing $80 billion this year. However, funding for Latin American and Caribbean startups remains 80% below its 2021 peak, with AI development concentrated in larger countries like Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Mexico. We must attract investments in other nations and address barriers hindering women's access to achieve a more equitable future. Are you ready to take the leap forward?
Muy bien, ahora vamos a invitar.
So we will now invite the members of the next panel. Ángel Melguizo, partner of Argia Green Tech and Economic Consulting. Please let's welcome him to the stage. The distinguished panelists are Silvia Tenasina, Country Manager for Salesforce Argentina. Welcome. Chandra Mouli, Vice President of Global Engineering at Qualcomm. Laura Álvarez Modernel, Business Development Manager for Generative AI in the Public Sector, Latin America at Amazon Web Services. Thank you, Laura, for being here. And Avinash Vashista, Chairman and CEO of Tolons Inc. Welcome, Avinash. Thank you all for being here. Ángel, you have the floor. Welcome, everyone. Thank you to the IDB and to the Interaction Group for inviting me. This is my first time at an event of this kind. You will see that the topic we have today it's very exciting, such as the AI infrastructure and architecture topics. My name is Ángel Melguizo. At Argia, we aim to shed light on the topics that are complex, like sustainability, technology. As I was saying, artificial intelligence and infrastructure is becoming increasingly more attractive. We cannot understand the world and the interactions between the different powers without including the role of artificial intelligence. And the geopolitics are influencing the development of AI. Where do we locate data centers, computing centers? Where is data? How are they used? How do you use energy, water, electricity? Those are all factors that influence the fundamentals of AI. This is an attractive issue because these data science and computing sciences turn energy and data and connectivity into intelligence. And it is attractive because the capital being raised and being mobilized by this sector of AI is spectacular. Only in semiconductors or chips manufacturing, 3 out of the 10 leading companies of the world are in this region. 3 out of the 10. 2 of them do not manufacture the chips, but only design them, engineers them. We have one of those companies with us here today. This sector is larger than the energy sector, 40% larger than the banking sector, and larger than the telecommunications sector as well. NVIDIA, which spoke in the previous session, is 5 times Johnson & Johnson's size, for instance. They are designing the chips I mentioned. And in Argentine terms, Qualcomm is 10 times larger than YPF or Telecom Argentina as well. That's for you to imagine what volume we're talking about. So all of this has to be translated into productivity, employment, and sustainable models. We are undergoing that transition. faced with initial studies by the MIT, for instance, saying that digital economy would add one economy of the UK per year. We are at 1/3 of that. It's still relevant, but productivity still needs to be impacted. And the more sustainable models, the business models should be sustainable, and we are working a lot on that at Argia. I am wearing my green tie. Those of you who know me from before will know that I wear it because of the importance of sustainability. In this scenario, Latin America has an opportunity. In these moments of pause, Latin America could and should do more. There are data centers in Brazil and Mexico, for instance, but Latin America is not at the top level when it comes to the development of this industry. It has a cleaner energy matrix than Europe, for instance, so training artificial intelligence models could be more sustainable than doing it in Europe. The population is young, it's vibrant, technology-driven. 5 of the greatest startups of the world would be in Latin America, in Buenos Aires, Chile, Bogotá, São Paulo. And unlike Argentina of the previous year, today we have a political vision to achieve this. So what we will deal with today is where should we go to achieve all this? We have one of the main leaders of the industries of artificial intelligence, producing, manufacturing or designing chips, data centers, or devising artificial intelligence strategies. The modality will be similar to the first panel. We'll have 2 rounds of questions. The experience of each of the companies, the internal experience, how they are determining the present day and the future of this industry. And the second round, where they will share the advices or recommendations they might have for the developers of this industry. So if we would like to start with Silvia. If there is something that AI can do is help us predict. So how do you see the future developments, Silvia? Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to highlight that AI is crossing all of our different stages. We have the smartphones, smart watches, Alexas. My mom, for instance, who is old, she speaks about the Turkish novels she watches on the TV with Alexa. And when I asked her why did she do that, she said she was more talkative than your father. So how can we make AI be accessible for us at all time? How can we recreate this with our collaborators in our companies to be able to predict, to be more productive? For instance, in marketing campaigns, to speak about something from real life. If we could send a marketing campaign to our 10 million clients, for instance, if I was advised to change the tires of my car, I wouldn't do that. If it's not relevant to me, I wouldn't care about that campaign. But if it is relevant, if I am booking an airplane ticket and the AI detects that and offers a travel insurance to me, then that would be a timely and relevant campaign. So how can companies make use of that AI and properly use resources? Thank you, Silvia. You've touched on one topic I'd like to discuss throughout the conversation, skills in organizations. I've reorganized the order, so in terms of narration, it would be easier for us to discuss that. So
what is your view? I mean, globally and speaking about Latin America, where are you seeing the main opportunities, the main gaps, and how to address them?
Well, thanks. Essentially, one of the things that I want to kind of take us back, and this is very relevant to people in this audience, is 30 years ago is when the outsourcing really started, fine? It was a way to look at how technology and how business processes can be done through the use of technology, in places like Latin America, India, Philippines, etc., fine? And so that was a big wave. Now today, when we're sitting here with the AI stuff, it has significantly changed it. And the reason I say change it is today in outsourcing of the technology and business process is about 550 billion across these countries, fine? And people say that the market is about 2 trillion. Now, technology, for example, if you look at a truck driver today driving those big trucks, it is going to be replaced by AI tomorrow, right? And the drug discovery, for example, if it takes 10 years, could just collapse to 3 years, by the way, with technology. So a lot of things are going to get impacted by technology. Now, the services economy in the US itself is about 21 trillion of the 28 trillion of GDP. The global services economy is about 67 trillion of the 104 trillion globally, by the way. Now, the question is the market only 2 trillion or is the market 20 trillion? Because all of that stuff is possible to be reinvented through AI right now. So I think first thing that everyone should take is the opportunity for Latin America in terms of technology and the business process is immense. It has gone from 2 trillion market to 20 trillion, I would say that. So that basically means is how do we leverage that stuff? Because people say, well, if technology is going to take away jobs, but the thing is that there are a lot of jobs that are going to be done. So first of all, I think people should know is that data is a basic lifeline, fine. I think 30 years ago, what was the most essential thing was the talent. That's it, fine. And the other the technology was all supportive. But in the world of AI, data is a must. That's where it happens. So the thing is that right now, does Latin America have the right data infrastructure? And the answer is no, fine. Obviously, there's a lot of strides being made by, Mexico City, for example, as a city, Buenos Aires, and maybe Sao Paulo. But what about the other cities in that sense? But what about other countries? So you need to have a way in a private-public partnership so that companies and organizations can share the data, because it's extremely important. You cannot have isolations of data. And then how do you store that data, like data lakes, and all of that infrastructure comes in. And then how do you process that data? And this is, I think, you talk about the AI infrastructure being very sustainable. So all of that stuff has to really be paid a lot of attention in that stuff. The second thing is the talent. Now, how do we leverage all this technology that we are developing? So the reskilling of people is very, very important right now. And it's not incremental reskilling. This requires a very different kind of skilling. And this is where I think people never really cared about whether they have to really work with the Qualcomms or the NVIDIAs. I think today you have to start looking at working with them also, even though they may be hardware companies, because they're designing models and so on and so forth. How do you use those models most effectively? That skill has to be taught, by the way, fine. And then, you look at some of the ethical concerns when you're designing any of these algorithms and things like that. I mean, you have to make sure that it's ethical, make sure that it's fair in that sense. I think so some of these infrastructure stuff is extremely important. And right now what clients are doing, again, to the audience over here, 30 years ago it was outsourcing. Now what's happening is the core technology, the core business of a client has to go into talent-rich countries like Latin America and India, etc. And clients are saying, I want to establish my own operations. And so you will see a lot of companies wanting to establish their own operations. It doesn't mean that they won't give work to other companies. They will bring those companies to come in and work within these offices. So the thing, and why is now Latin America getting a lot of attention? Because previously if some task required 500 people, today it requires 50 people. But there needs to be more collaboration in the same time zone. So you will see an increase in nearshoring significantly right now. A lot of clients are telling their partners that if you do not have a location in the nearshore, we will not give you more work.
Thank you, Avinash. And in the next round, I will pick your brain on where are the sectors, which are the particular industries where you see more potential for Latin America, so that some business matchmaking can be made. But you mentioned skills. It was mentioned also the issue of obviously of the infrastructure. And I want to move off to one of the other pillars, which is computing power. Obviously, you have to have data, you have to have the right people to manage and study that data, but also you have to have computing power that today is based on chips. And one of these fabulous companies, one of these companies that are actually almost an idea company is Qualcomm. So how are you handling, man, the demand of new, more powerful and cheaper chips in your business?
First of all, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me and having me participate in this panel. Appreciate that. So to discuss the chips, of course, we talked about the training, which has been a huge focus in the last several years now. And, it's massive computing needed for training. And NVIDIA is obviously, doing a great job of enabling that infrastructure. And if you look at the VC, venture capital, billions of dollars have been invested in training models. And the claim to fame on models was the larger the model, the better it is. Now the focus is how do you make models more effective but smaller, so that you could deploy them in a variety of hardware types, in the inference side. So coming to the what we do is on the edge computing of AI. So if you look at cell phones that we all carry, we are putting more smaller and smaller models in these phones, like 8 billion parameter models versus 170 billion or 350 billion models that are out there, which can't physically fit into a phone form factor, or a laptop, or maybe a car, as we do more AI in EVs, things like that. So from a Qualcomm perspective on the edge computing infrastructure, first we developed a custom CPU called Orion, and we brought this to market just earlier this year on the PC, and we call it the Copilot Plus PC that Microsoft and Qualcomm jointly announced. So we are entering the PC market specifically not only for regular PC tasks or laptops, but also edge AI processing. So the CPU is a custom-built CPU on an ARM architecture, which is very low power because you want battery life. And most importantly, when you run AI at the edge, you want the AI assistants to be running pretty much all the time in the background. So think of that AI agent as your assistant as you interact with your device, whether it's a laptop or a phone. And so these things are going to consume power. So one of the important things for us to do is when you're not tethered, as in you don't have power, and you're in an airplane, you're in a park, whatever, you want that AI agents to be sipping power, very slow, small amounts of power, and still be processing, because the AI agents have to be intelligent to figure out what's going on as you're interacting with your device. Let's say, I think your use case was airline ticket. Another use case, you're driving to the airport, and it knows the GPS coordinates where you are. You have a Google Maps saying that you're going to the airport. Maybe the AI agent will say, hey, do you want a parking ticket or reservation? Do you want me to recommend some restaurants in the airport, etc. So the AI agent is constantly going to look at things to be assisting you with. So that is an important element. So CPU is a very important element of that. And low power, highly performant CPUs. And that's Orion. The next thing is, if you look at AI models, even the smaller models, it's basically a massive vector database. So you have to process these things. CPUs are not that efficient in processing neural networks. And without getting too deep into that space, the NPU that we developed called the Hexagon It's a neural processing unit. So you're familiar with CPUs that we all use in laptops and servers and all that. NPU is something that we developed initially in back in 2014, but with the whole push on AI, NPUs has become very relevant in the infrastructure to be able to process these requests and then work with the LLM models and generate AI responses. So NPU is very important. The next one is GPU, and we have been in the GPU business for a long time for the graphics, for gaming and all that, and even mobiles. So, and the GPU is a very important element. Then there's image processing, where you have vision, photographs or videos you're taking, and then voice, and then how to interact with multimodal models in Gen AI. So you take a picture and you have a voiceover and say, can you basically change the sky to be blue? And these are real use cases that users would be interested. You take a photograph, it's kind of a gray sky. So the AI has to understand that the sky, what is the sky from the image? And then maybe clouds, remove the clouds and put a blue sky behind it. Those are multiple use cases in infrastructure. So the image processing is important, we have that. And then there's modem connectivity. If you want to go and do a hybrid AI, how does the infrastructure from a end edge device communicate with the cloud if you want to transfer some of the larger complex AI things to the cloud? So that's another aspect of that. And last but not least, we have developed what's called AI Hub, which is really in the internet. And so developers, like for example in LATAM, can go in and actually exercise a whole bunch of models, LLM models that we have, multimodal models, speech to voice, speech to text, and text to speech, image to text, all those kinds of different models are available so that you can go and develop applications which are optimized on our silicon, which is a Snapdragon. Or you can bring your own models in the AI Hub, and then we will help you optimize your models. Or if you want to build a new model, we can help you with that as well. So from an infrastructure perspective, we believe that, and I will talk about later, I guess, on what is the edge AI case. But from an infrastructure perspective, we believe in heterogeneous computing, where all of these different pieces and chipsets or chiplets would interact with each other, each GPU, CPU, and NPUs performing specialized functions when it comes to Gen AI execution.
Well, thank you, Chandra. Just a comment. You used your 2 slots. So I will give you a 3rd slot at the bonus, as a bonus, so that everybody from all the speakers know I'm enforcing my own rules. But really interested, I didn't want to cut you off because it's important both the design of chips. Esta es una compañía que
This company, because it has good ideas of how to design a chip costs 40 times telecom from Argentina. That's how important it is to have good ideas, and that's how much that market pays.
Ability and the relation with edge. Lo que te voy a pedir, Laura, es voy a pasar.
Laura, I will now ask you to first take Joaquin to finish or complete the infrastructure segment, and then we'll go to services. Because another key component in AI infrastructures is cloud computing and how this democratizes many processes that used to be much fewer. So your vision from IBM would be very useful. Thank you, Angel. I also thank you for the opportunity of talking to you today. We experienced the convergence between our presence in Latin America and the history of AI. It's over 100 years we've been in Latin America, over 100 years in Argentina, and an AI story that began over 50 years ago. We had a few important times when we won the game of chess facing Kasparov, and then when we faced the Jeopardy program. But more importantly, in 2014, we started to sell the Watson AI system worldwide. Since 2014 in Latin America, it's over 1,000 cases of AI implementation for business, and more recently, now on Gen AI in the past 2 years, we've implemented hundreds of cases or deployed hundreds of cases in the region. And there's many lessons based on our interaction with customers. We've interviewed and surveyed over 3,000 C-level executives globally last year, we identified that in Latin America, 64% of all corporations are moving forward with the implementation of AI on an accelerated fashion, while globally we have 59% of all companies accelerating in this direction. So from the perspective of AI consumption in the region, we are quite advanced. And in addition, I think other important lessons are that companies want to use AI, but they want to use it mainly for purposes of differentiating their business. I don't want to use AI to deliver the same thing my competitor delivers. I want to use AI for me to be a competitive differentiator. When we look at the infrastructures available to operate AI today, it's edge, the cloud, and also their own data centers. The important point is that in addition to the LLMs and SLMs, which are huge accelerators, companies need to be able to contribute their own intellect, their data, to enrich the models, enhance the models, and thus deliver more interesting experiences to end customers. So it's important for companies to have a hybrid approach that will allow them to leverage from edge computing, that will allow companies to leverage the flexibility of the cloud, but also their legacy structures, so many data they built over their history, so as to take a more interesting experience to their clients. And for that reason, we built a platform in IBM that allows our customers to integrate all of these worlds and thus take more value and speed with AI-based service offerings to their customers. Thank you, Joaquin. Data, computing power, human management, and capital. But what do you need those for? And where do we see more potential in applications? That's what I want to move on now in 2 dimensions: for utilities, for startups to be able to do new things, and also for new private sectors. Thanks for your patience, Laura, and having skipped you. So speaking about comparisons, Amazon Web Services, say, has revenues of twice the largest pharmaceutical in the world because it's managing a cloud. That's how much capitalization the sector is driving, and the new leader in the segment is Amazon, especially in this intersection with startups and governments. Great. I like it because we are going to put a face to AI. Sometimes it's hard to explain what it is. 70% of all corporations are already experiencing or experimenting with the cloud. In addition, there's a study from Goldman, I think, that says that in the next 10 years, Gen AI will grow the world GDP by 7%. And this is if we are not intentional, simply by letting things flow. What we see is that the challenge is not experimenting, but capitalizing the opportunity and moving from trial to action. And there are a few cases and tips that we'll later share with you, so you can do it. But the most important thing is where we see there is progress already and which industries are hardest impacted. Definitely education, finance, health, and government. Sometimes we don't connect the dots, but we see that's where there's plenty of innovation, probably because, and this is a feature of Latin America and our opportunity for capitalization, is because we have quite interesting problems. I don't know what you think in Argentina. And something that values Gen AI is to what extent we know these problems, how experts we are in knowing our users. And that makes governments more focused on citizens. So we're in Buenos Aires. I will start with the city of Buenos Aires case. 3 million live in the city of Buenos Aires, and 3.5 million commute on a daily basis in and out of the city. I don't know if you're familiar with Boti, the chatbot from the city of Buenos Aires. I think it's among the largest chatbots WhatsApp uses. They worked with our Gen AI Innovation Center, and in capitalizing the opportunity, there's a message I want to leave with you. Speed is of the essence, and something that provides speed is the cloud. It allows us to scale and be fast. If we add Gen AI on top, it allows us, in addition to the scale, to do something very complicated, which is to customize. How can I customize messages much better in something that is while I scale? And this is what Botti did by working with our Gen AI Innovation Center. There are 600 formalities in the city of Buenos Aires, procedures, and what they wanted to do was to standardize them and make them accessible for citizens to ask the chatbot, what should I do? And that it wouldn't be a Q&A page and a link in a website that is static, but rather to tailor-make it to what I need to solve at that time. So they worked with us to start embedding AI on Botti chatbot so that it can answer automatically in natural language, but not only that, in the Spanish we speak at the River Plate, with the vos pronoun rather than tú, and when you can use colloquial words. Where should I go tomorrow to open my new store? To have it approved. That's of the essence. And they did it. They experimented with it. And also, there are things I don't want the chatbot to answer because it's not my role to answer what I think about something that happened today or about a given politician. So they also managed to set limits, boundaries, so that it wouldn't answer on topics that are not in their purview. What's the beauty of this case? Not only they experimented and added value to citizens, which made them a more proactive rather than reactive government, because I know what citizens are asking also, where my problems are, and how can I solve them to create no solutions. In addition, they brought the government much closer to citizens, and it emphasized the data. For this, I need a data strategy. The city government has an open data strategy. That's the beauty of Botti as a case, and how a government, which one would think goes more slowly, is picking up speed. And then, in terms of startups, what's the role of startups in accelerating innovation in the public sector? And there are many cases we start to see of startups leading innovation facing public sector organizations. For instance, in health, we are working with Liberty Health, and they are focused on providing service to hospitals, to doing client management. They created a health lake with health data. Without data, there's no Gen AI either. And what they did was to start processing patient documents for doctors to spend more time with the patients. So rather than reading 10,000 documents and spend hours analyzing whether they understand the handwriting of the person that came before them, I can ask directly what the status is, where my medical record is, and I start being proactive. It starts giving us red flags when a patient took a study and they have cancer potential, how I treat that, or the patient, what I can do. That's operating, if I'm not mistaken, in over 700 units and hospitals in the state of Sao Paulo in Brazil, and it reaches 7 million patients. It's a health tech accelerating innovation in the health sector. There's another case in Chile, too, and it sheds light on knowing this is our value in AI. For other purposes, we have many options with technology. The important thing is to know what my problem is. There's an tech in Chile called Your Class, which created a teaching assistant, not a chatbot, which is the traditional thing we see with AI, a teaching assistant that accompanies teachers to create projects based on learning. So The teacher doesn't spend any time creating the lesson, but implementing it, spending time with the student, understanding what each of them need. In answer to the second sub-question, we invest in accelerating startups. We have an innovation fund for startups that are focused on Gen AI. There's one that came out of Argentina, more than 10 came out of Latin America, but what startups do is basically know problems very well. The one we chose in Argentina is called Pircle and is focused on a payment management system. They humanized payment management with technology, starting from a problem they had as serial entrepreneurs for the payment of credit cards. So it's essential to know what the problems are, to seek innovation from government, or else look for it in the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Well, there are two panelists that have respected my authority. The rest have not, so you will receive a prize for it. Mobility, health, education, those are very interesting topics for all citizens of Latin America.
Where to work in this AI-powered economy that is going to change things. So where are the niches that you are seeing in that sector?
Yes, again, I think the niches have remained pretty constant in terms of the time. I think one place where the technology is adopted the fastest is financial services, right? So anything which is a fintech product is very, very important. Payments is very, very big. I mean, a big part of the population of global population is not banked, fine? So especially if you look at what the adoption of leapfrogging has happened in Africa, for example, in India on payments is substantial. I think, so payments is one. The other one is, especially for this region, I think this region has done a lot, especially Brazil, for example, on agriculture. And that's a sector that has tremendous opportunity in terms of what it can do in terms of the AI stuff. The other one is healthcare cost is really going up high everywhere, especially in the US. I mean, it's a big issue, by the way, fine. And so I think you will see a lot of investment going in, a lot of demand on the healthcare stuff, right from telemedicine to devices and how do you deliver, health. In fact, when you want to look at any sector, remember one thing. It's very, very important to start off saying, how can you reimagine the consumer experience? Fine. So for example, when Uber reimagined the experience of taxi, you don't have to book in advance and you are figuring out whether I have a flight to catch, whether this person will be there or not there, and you're calling up and all the stuff. And he went to the wrong address. All of the stuff was reimagined, by the way. So right now, don't be bound on how you did things. Ask the customer, dream with the customer as to how you can do it, and then find the technology to be able to do it. One last point. I think right now, if you say, how are we going to do this stuff? Microsoft, Salesforce are coming up with agents right now, fine? And these agents, so right now when you talk about 500 people, eventually what's going to happen is you will get these agents. These agents are going to be trained on very specific things, on customer support, this and that, for different things. And it will have the ability to take data from yourself. So focus right now, look at 3 years down the road and saying, what, I need to work with companies and smaller companies in terms of having agents for everything, whether it's engineering, whether it's customer service, whether it's technology.
Y como han visto, oportunidades en servicios públicos, oportunidades en algunos de estos servicios.
So there are opportunities in the public services sector, in the healthcare, and since we have two leading business women here, I would like to ask you about how can we accelerate the entry into this sector? How can we tap into the opportunities that we are seeing today? What could you share with us about that? So I'll start with Silvia, then Laura, and then we discuss sustainability. Well, the percentage of acquisition or adoption of AI in Argentine companies is very low. only 11% are using AI productively, and in Brazil that number goes up to 63%. This figure is important, and we need to pay attention to it. We have an incredible opportunity. There's another figure I'd like to share with you. I work at Salesforce. It is estimated that there will be over 2 million positions created in Salesforce, and Latin America will account for 20% of that. So my advice to companies is to acquire knowledge, train your employees in these skills, and the topic of silvering, the service, for instance, plus 50 service, it is important to incorporate them. There will be over 93 million jobs created and 87 million jobs eliminated. So how can we reconvert those 87 million into that 93? Because otherwise, over half of the economically active population will be eliminated. So we need to reskill our collaborators in the technologies that are already with us today. As I mentioned at the beginning, my mom discovered on her own how she could talk with Alexa, and if I leave her, she will probably develop that skill further. Well, what we need to address is what we know today. What Silvia mentioned about her mom not being trained about how to use Alexa, let's raise our hands, those of us who use AI. As leaders, do we know that that is already happening in our organizations? If we don't, how can we create the environment for our collaborators to experiment that and train themselves? There's no AI without data, so we need to prepare that aspect as well. Well, thank you very much. I am quite concerned about the definition of the population over 50 being left out. There's a long way to go for us. No, not for me. So I'll probably enter the reskilling programs soon. So to wrap up, I'd like to touch on the sustainability issues for the development of AI and the tools powered by AI. There is the need for continuous investment in social terms to generate additional tasks and to look at climate issues. Chandra, edge computing is efficient and in all ways, but also in terms of energy use, in water use, for data science. So Chandra, I'd like to close up with you. A key message is that artificial intelligence is sustainable and it's a good business. It attracts consumers, talent. So what would be your last remark on that? And lastly, we'll have 30 seconds each.
Go for AI because it's power efficient, it's less expensive, and as I said earlier, the models are shrinking, as well as you have privacy. You can control your data, and everything is done locally whenever you can. So that's what I would say.
Thank you very much. Joaquín.
Hola, gracias. Bien, 90% de los consumidores hoy día dicen que prefieren
90% of collaborators prefer to work with companies that address their data ethically. And also the majority of executives in companies state that it's necessary to advance data security in their operations. But only 60% say that their corporations are prepared to implement those policies, those governance policies. So what I'd like to say is that there are three main pillars that companies need to address in order to ensure an ethical AI. First, at organizational level, The president of companies needs to allocate clear responsibilities to adopt AI to the employees in his or her organization. Each of those employees need to be very clear about their responsibilities in the areas they work in. Two, there needs to be a framework for governance in organizations, so data origin, data training, how they are used, how can we correct errors so that the results of the use of AI are ethical, unbiased, and without risks. And lastly, that regulations are observed for clients so AI services can be delivered benefiting the society and businesses. That's excellent. Thank you.
Puede hacer, qué debemos hacer en América Latina, pero querría agradecer, por supuesto, vuestra disciplina, en serio, por
Thank you very much to all for observing time, for your contributions about AI in our times. I am fortunate to be able to work on these issues that are so disruptive. We've seen that AI is at an incipient implementation stage as a broadly used, widely used technology. This is changing every day. The models are being implemented in some sectors, but we are undergoing a transition, and Latin America and the Caribbean, who have not been at the cutting edge of this process, can catch up, because developing AI responsibly demands solid and sustainable structures, fostering social innovation, generating employment, and being environmentally friendly in terms of the use of water and energy. Latin America has the potential, it has talent, the size, the resources. Population in Latin America has wise and skilled workers. The region has minerals, land, water, a cleaner energy matrix than Europe, and a very large size. The digital economy will compete in terms of the size of markets. We know that in terms of policies to develop talent, to be integrated economically, we know that what works is public-private partnerships. If I may, I'd like to close up with a quote by Diego Pablo Simeone. He said that if we believe that we can and we work for it, it is possible. So I believe that Latin America and the Caribbean can do it. Why do you think the region can do it? Well, I think because we are undergoing a very interesting period with talent, the resources, a very interesting time zone. We have the will. We want our children to stay in our country, so we need to take advantage of this moment.
User interface, and then you will start imagining all kinds of use cases on why you can.
Tenemos los mejores problemas, me parece. Así que
Well, we have a great problem. Let's just take advantage of AI, use creativity, and solve those problems.
By the way, don't be shackled with the old way of doing things with the old technology.
Bien, por nuestro lado, yo creo que
Sorry, as I said in my first part, we are now accelerating the use of AI faster than the rest of the world. I think we have everything to continue that direction. The creativity of Latin Americans is an asset that may make a huge impact on what we're going to deliver over the next few years in AI. Thank you very much.